Eden Brooks moved quietly through the Vineyard's sprawling event space, trays of delicate glasses balanced carefully in her hands. The evening air was cool but heavy with summer's warmth, golden light filtering through the vine leaves that stretched overhead. Her plain dress, a simple navy blue, made her blend into the background effortlessly, just another face in the crowd, unnoticed by the sharply dressed guests all eager to outbid one another on exclusive bottles of wine. Her soft accent drew a few glances, though mostly accompanied by raised eyebrows or skimmed-over looks, signaling an assumed lack of belonging. At one point, a woman with silk hair and a sparkling necklace hissed just loud enough for Eden to hear, "Does she even speak English properly?" Eden's lips curved into a faint, practiced smile. Such remarks had become routine, and she had long learned to tune them out. The auction was in full swing, voices rising and falling with each new bid. Vivian Carlton, tall, impeccably dressed in an emerald gown that caught the light, stood near the auctioneer, commanding attention as brilliantly as the jewels she wore. Her voice rang through the crowd, calling for bids on a rare vintage bottle. Just as she lifted her hand to encourage another raise, the unexpected happened. Vivian's eyes fluttered shut, and then she slumped forward abruptly, mid-sentence. Gasps erupted around the crowd. Forks clattered onto plates, conversations broke off abruptly, and all eyes turned toward the fallen woman. For a frozen moment, no one moved. Some stepped forward hesitantly, others glanced around, unsure of what to do next, or who should take charge in the sudden silence of shock. Eden's breath caught. The night's poised elegance had shattered in an instant. The warm hum of excitement that had filled the Vineyard's canopy was replaced by a sharp edge of panic. Vivian Carlton lay motionless on the polished wooden floor, her emerald gown a stark contrast against the pale panels. Guests clustered uneasily, some frozen in place, others whispering to each other with growing alarm. The fake calm of the auctioneer faltered as he clutched the microphone, his voice shaky. "Is there a doctor here? Please, someone help." Hands waved uncertainly, whispers turned to murmurs of "panic attack" and "heart failure." Panic multiplied, but action lagged behind. The hostess, a glamorous woman named Karen, looked visibly frazzled, fumbling to maintain order while glancing toward the back exit as if hoping for medical support to appear magically. Her voice trembled as she asked a hotel staff member to call emergency services. It was chaos masquerading as control. In the middle of this, Eden stood still for only a second before stepping forward, her movement quiet but purposeful. Her eyes, calm and clear, scanned the crowd. "Please, clear a small space around her," she said firmly but without raising her voice. There was a ripple of uncertain glances, some disbelieving murmurs. Who was this plain waitress suddenly giving orders? A man in a sharp black vest frowned and muttered, "What's she thinking? Who does she think she is?" but didn't get up to intervene. Eden didn't waver. "Sir," she said, addressing a man nearby holding a wine glass, "call 911 right now. And you," she added, nodding toward a guest with an attentive air, "please get me some ice and a cloth soaked in cold water." The room became focused on Eden despite the murmurs of disbelief. She stepped closer to Vivian, gently brushing back the woman's dark hair to check her face. Her fingers found Vivian's wrist with confidence, moving slowly as her trained hands measured pulse and breath. Around her, the crowd drifted closer, some hopeful, others skeptical. Behind the guests, the soft buzzing of their expensive phones echoed. Someone was already capturing this unfolding scene. Eden's face remained steady, but inside, she was hyper-focused. She saw the subtle signs, the flushed redness spreading across Vivian's neck and chest, the slight swelling of her lips. It was not just a faint, it was an emergency. Anaphylactic shock. She turned to the young bartender standing by the wine bar, her voice low but demanding, "Do you have an EpiPen here?" There must be one in the first aid kit. The bartender blinked, visibly surprised by the question, but nodded and rushed behind the counter. Eden never lost sight of Vivian as the bartender returned quickly with the small, bright orange box. "It's in the emergency kit on the wall behind the bar," the bartender advised, glancing at the watching guests. Eden knelt beside Vivian, carefully withdrawing the EpiPen. The murmurs of disbelief from some onlookers grew louder. Who does she think she is? Just a waitress. Yet no one stepped to stop her. With deliberate action, Eden exposed Vivian's thigh, the emerald gown shifting quietly. She pushed the needle firmly into the leg, holding it steady for the required seconds. Vivian's body twitched faintly beneath her hands. Eden was aware of the gathering eyes, some impressed, some baffled by the calm authority emanating from this simple, quiet woman. Minutes felt like hours, but Eden kept talking softly to the crowd, explaining what was happening to ease rising anxiety. "The EpiPen delivers adrenaline to counteract the allergic reaction," she said. "We need to keep her still and wait for the emergency team to arrive." The temperature in the crowd seemed to shift. The once doubtful whispers fell silent. Guests exchanged glances, some leaning in to listen, eyes widening as Vivian's labored breathing began to ease. Eden wiped the cold cloth across Vivian's damp forehead, her fingers gentle but sure. The woman's eyelids fluttered, her chest rising less erratically. Relief flowed through the onlookers, whispered thanks muttered in awe. The CEO himself, Mr. Carlton, pushed through the crowd, his usual composed demeanor replaced by visible concern. He crouched beside Eden and Vivian, eyes wide and grateful. "Thank you," he murmured, voice thick with emotion. "You saved her." Eden nodded, returning silently to her place when the ambulance crew arrived, efficiently taking over without fuss. As paramedics lifted Vivian onto the stretcher, they nodded approvingly at Eden's clear assessment. The crowd's mood had transformed. Where there had been snide remarks and dismissals, now there was stunned respect. Some whispered Eden's name, murmurs like a soft chant, "Eden Brooks." It was a name no one expected but one that now carried an undeniable weight. At the edges of the gathering, a lifestyle blogger discreetly slid her phone into her pocket, capturing a final clip of Eden standing modestly to the side, not looking for recognition but emanating the quiet dignity of someone who knew exactly what to do when it mattered most. The evening's glitz and glamour had been overshadowed by something far more real. And Eden Brooks had stepped firmly into a moment she would never forget. Eden Brooks sat on the worn sofa in her small apartment later that evening, the din of the Vineyard auction fading behind closed windows. The sounds of clinking glasses and polite chatter had been replaced by the steady quiet of an ordinary room, familiar and unpretentious, much like her. The faint hum of a ceiling fan stirred the warm air as Eden's thoughts carried her back to a different life, one filled with urgency and purpose, far removed from serving trays and subdued corners. Several years ago, Eden had walked the polished corridors of a city hospital, bustling with the relentless energy common to emergency rooms. She wore a crisp uniform, the fabric embroidered with the unmistakable insignia of a paramedic crew. The weight of her medic pack was heavy on her shoulders, but she carried it with a resolute determination born of training and heart. She was a woman who had thrived amid chaos, guiding the broken and the frightened with steady hands and a calm voice. One memory surfaced sharply. The wailing siren of the ambulance cutting through the nighttime city, Eden and her partner rushing down crowded streets, each second a battle against fading life. She crouched beside a young child, tears streaking through dirt on his face, his small hand clutching hers with fragile strength. She whispered reassurance while assessing injuries swiftly, coordinating care and calm with exacting precision. That little boy had survived the accident, and Eden had watched hope bloom in his mother's eyes. This was her calling, and it had once been everything she wanted. Another scene followed, a winter night with icy wind rattling a rescue helicopter's blades. Eden had been the first responder in a severe multi-car collision, the scene more terrifying than words. Blood and smoke mixed with the sharp tang of fuel. Yet beneath the fear, there was her fierce clarity. She had helped save lives, stitching hope into fractures, lifting cries with her steady presence. But as the flashbacks played out, so did the story of change, a hard pivot driven by life's unpredictable cruelty. Eden's husband, a factory worker with broad shoulders and kind eyes, was involved in a tragic workplace accident. A momentary lapse, a fallen beam, and his life shifted irrevocably. The injury left him with a permanent disability, draining not only his body but their savings, their strength, their future. Eden's world tightened. She threw herself into her work harder than ever, stretching herself thin with double shifts and overtime. The emotional weight was enormous, but she held fast for her family's sake. Yet burnout crept in silently, exhaustion gnawed relentlessly. Although she loved her career, the pressure began to erode her, the constant exposure to trauma and grief taking a toll not just on her body but on her spirit. One cold evening, after she'd come home to find her son drawing alone by the dim kitchen light, Eden realized she had reached a breaking point. The cost of keeping her family afloat was consuming her every breath. So she made the painful decision to step away from the emergency medical field she had once cherished. It was a wrench she carried deep, leaving behind not only a profession but a part of herself. Financial strains and the need for stability led her to seek quieter work, jobs that demanded less adrenaline, less heartache, even if they required humility. The idyllic Vineyard area offered work in hospitality, where Eden slipped into the background, sleeves rolled up to carry trays instead of stretchers. She adapted her life to protect what mattered most, her young son's laughter and safe presence. She never spoke of her medical past at the Vineyard auctions or among the polished guests and socialites. Eden had learned to keep that part of herself under wraps, because here, the judgments were harsher, the assumptions pointed, and being a humble waitress meant erasing the brilliance of what she once had been. She convinced herself she was invisible, untouchable by the echoes of applause that had once marked her days. Yet, inside, her knowledge remained sharp. Years of training, instinct, and unshakable confidence lay dormant but alive. She understood illness and injury as intimately as any doctor or paramedic. Her patience had been honed in hospital corridors, her calm forged in fire when seconds meant the difference between survival and loss. Her son stirred from his sleep in the adjoining room, a soft noise pulling her from memory. She stood, smoothing her dress, silent pride mixing with old wounds. The quiet resolve that had carried her through those years now softened her features. Eden was a woman who had survived more than many knew, carrying invisible strength beneath a modest exterior. In these moments back in her apartment, away from the glimmering crowd and whispered remarks, Eden's past and present converged. It was the life behind the waitress's quiet gaze, the story etched in small acts of kindness and expertise unseen, waiting patiently to step forward again. Tonight, she had answered that call, not for attention, but because it was simply who she was. The flashbacks faded, leaving Eden with a weight lifted and a familiar fire rekindled. Tomorrow, the Vineyard would buzz with gossip about the incident. But for now, as she prepared for another day of work, Eden knew she was no longer just a background figure. She was something more. And deep inside, she was ready for whatever came next. The morning after the Vineyard auction, Eden arrived for her usual shift feeling the same quiet nerve she always did before stepping into the opulent frenzy. Yet, today brought something different, a subtle shift in energy that was impossible to miss. As she refilled glasses near the entrance, a hushed murmur rippled through the room. Eyes that the day before had skimmed past her now lingered. Guests who previously avoided her gaze offered tentative nods or even brief smiles. The whispers that followed her footsteps weren't mocking anymore, they spoke her name with surprise and something like admiration. Eden Brooks, someone murmured near the wine racks, the woman who saved Mrs. Carlton. She kept her head down, accustomed to fading away, but even her co-workers caught the change. Molly, a server who had always been cold and distant, approached with a hesitant smile. "Hey, Eden. I didn't expect that. You were incredible last night." Surprise flickered in Eden's chest. "Thank you, Molly. It was nothing, really." But it wasn't nothing. The echoes of that evening were already jumping from hushed conversation into the brighter light of recognition. Word traveled fast. As guests departed from the Vineyard's lush grounds the night before, some had pulled out their phones and quietly recorded portions of the emergency. Social media feeds bloomed with short videos captured on shaky hands, one showing Eden's calm hands administering the EpiPen, another capturing the audience's odd faces as the crisis was contained. Later that day, a local lifestyle blogger named Jenna posted a clip titled "Hero of the Vineyard Auction. The Waitress Who Saved a Life." The clip circulated quickly, gathering likes and comments. Friends of Eden's co-workers sent her texts bearing praise. Messages popped up on her phone from acquaintances she hadn't spoken to in months, all mentioning how proud they were of her. Even the CEO himself, Mr. Carlton, sent a note through the event's management. It read, "Please extend my sincere thanks to Eden Brooks. Her quick thinking and skilled response saved my wife's life. We are forever grateful." This simple acknowledgement, coming from a man used to commanding attention, felt like a measure of validation Eden hadn't realized she craved. In the following days, guests who had once passed her by with barely a glance began greeting her with warmth. Some even sought to engage her in conversation, asking how she had learned to respond so calmly. She found herself explaining, cautiously at first, snippets of her past as an EMT before deflecting questions that felt too personal. Her co-workers grew more welcoming, no longer shying from her presence. The bartender who had fetched the EpiPen clapped her on the shoulder one evening, teasing gently, "You know, you might make a terrible waitress, but a great paramedic." Even Karen, the frazzled event hostess who had seemed overwhelmed during the incident, approached Eden with a shy smile. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "I didn't believe you could handle that. You were amazing." Eden accepted the apology with grace, though a flicker of old pain, a reminder of how she was once underestimated, still lingered. Meanwhile, the online community began piecing together aspects of Eden's history. Photos surfaced showing a younger Eden in uniform, standing alongside her EMT team at community events. Old interviews, where she spoke passionately about emergency medicine and saving lives, garnered renewed attention. Comment threads praised her for stepping away from the spotlight yet never losing her dedication to helping others. The sudden return of Eden's past into public view stirred a mixture of emotions within her. Pride mingled with discomfort as she grappled with the attention. Suddenly, the persona she had carefully constructed, a modest waitress, invisible in the glittering world of the wealthy, was fracturing under the weight of new recognition. Yet, beneath it all, the core of Eden's strength remained untarnished. The quiet dignity she had maintained in the face of judgment and dismissal was now met with something new, respect. One afternoon, as Eden carried a tray through the sunlit corridor of the Vineyard service area, she found Vivian Carlton waiting by the staff entrance. The woman's eyes, no longer clouded by distress but bright with gratitude, met Eden's with genuine warmth. "Eden," Vivian said softly, her voice steady, "you saved my life that night. I don't know how to thank you enough." "No thanks needed," Eden replied, her usual reticence softened by the moment. "I just did what anyone should do." Vivian shook her head, a slight smile touching her lips. "No, you did much more. You reminded all of us what true courage looks like. As the days passed, Eden felt herself being woven back into a community she had long set aside. People began to see her not just as a quiet waitress, but as someone with depth and resilience, capable of extraordinary calm in crisis. Still, the balance was delicate. Eden remained wary of the spotlight, conscious that the respect she had won could quickly dissolve if people discovered the full scope of her past or if she faltered. Yet the gentle kindness she now received rekindled hope, that perhaps this time, she need not hide her true self. Through the whirl of renewed recognition and soft applause, Eden held tight to the promise of possibility stirring within her quiet heart. The whispers that once mocked her name had transformed, now they spoke with reverence and anticipation. And in those whispers, Eden heard the stirring of a future she had long feared but was now ready to embrace. A few days after the Vineyard auction, Eden's phone buzzed with a message from an unfamiliar number. The text was brief but clear. Eden Brooks, this is Claire Simmons from the Valley Emergency Medical Training Center. We saw the video of your actions at the Carlton event. We would like to offer you a place in our advanced paramedic recertification program starting next month. Please contact us at your earliest convenience. Eden stared at the screen, fingers trembling slightly. The offer was unexpected, a lifeline thrown across the gap she had carefully built between her old life and the one she now led. For years, the idea of returning to medical training, to that demanding world, had felt like a dream too painful to entertain. But now, the possibility was tangible, almost within reach. Over the following days, Eden wrestled with doubt and hope. Her apartment, usually quiet and filled with the soft sounds of her son's laughter and homework, became the place where she paced, chewed on forgotten meals, and stared out the window into the vineyard's rolling hills. What if she tried and failed? What if the old stresses pulled her under again? Could she balance this chance with the life she'd rebuilt here, away from the chaos of hospitals and sirens? One evening, after her son was tucked into bed, Eden found herself scrolling through messages, thank you notes from guests at the auction, texts from coworkers, even a message from Vivian Carlton herself, expressing sincere gratitude and encouragement. Each word lifted her resolve, showing her that her skills had meaning beyond her humble role, and that people believed in her. The night grew deep and still as Eden finally dialed the number Claire Simmons had left. A warm, professional voice answered, describing the program in detail, rigorous but accommodating, designed for skilled paramedics seeking to recertify and expand their expertise. Scholarships and flexible hours were available for single parents. The conversation ended with an invitation to visit the center before the program began. Eden accepted. The day she stepped through the doors of the training center, she felt a mix of nerves and determination. The sterile corridors reminded her of former days, but this time the weight was different, lighter, born of choice rather than necessity. She was greeted by Claire, who welcomed her with a knowing smile. We're glad to have you, Eden. Your experience and calm under pressure are exactly what we want here. Training days were demanding, filled with simulations, lectures, and skill refreshers. Eden pushed herself, sometimes exhausted but always focused. The instructors soon recognized her talent and dedication. Other students, noticing her poise and quiet competence, began to seek her advice during group exercises. For the first time in years, Eden felt part of a community that valued her fully. Outside of training, Eden balanced motherhood with renewed purpose. She would gather her son each evening with stories of challenges and small victories, no glamorous tales, just honest moments that reminded both of them of the strength in starting anew. The transformation was subtle but profound. Eden no longer saw herself as invisible or diminished. She was reclaiming her identity, weaving her past skills with her present resilience. One afternoon, after a long shift of practical drills, Eden found herself standing in front of a mirror, trying on the crisp new uniform emblazoned with the emblem of the Valley Emergency Medical Training Center. The fit was nearly perfect, the fabric symbolizing not only a profession but a promise renewed. Later that day, at the small apartment where her son waited, Eden opened the door and gathered him into a fierce, warm hug. The boy smiled, eyes bright with pride and love. In that embrace was the image of everything Eden had fought for, the chance to stand tall, not just as a waitress or a mother, but as a healer and protector once more. No longer invisible. No longer afraid. Eden Brooks had come back to claim her strength. And she was ready for whatever lay ahead.